Hampshire. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good morning. It's great to be here. So I'm running in this race as an independent because I think it's time to put service back into public service. And I think, unfortunately, this seat has flip-flopped between the same two office holders for a decade now. And I think, one of my opponents likes to say, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Well, I sort of feel like the two of them have been at the table and New Hampshire has been on the menu. And so I'm running because I think I can bring my business skills, my commitment to public service, having run a nonprofit and a foundation, to realize real change for New Hampshire. And I'm very honored to be the first independent ever in the history of the state of New Hampshire, either for a federal candidate or a statewide race, to have qualified for all the debates. So as you may know, the news media has very significant criteria to qualify for the debates. You have to show that your polling is high enough that you could win the race. You have to have a staff of a certain size. You have to have spent enough on advertising, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel very fortunate to be the first independent ever in New Hampshire history to qualify for the debates. Thank you. So when I talk about putting service back into public service, what I think is really important to understand is that, unfortunately, both of our current congressman and our former congresswoman are bought and paid for by DC special interests. If you look, I saw Congressman Gibbs up here. He was talking about attacking the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, started by Elizabeth Warren, who was a professor of mine at Harvard Law School. Of course he's going to do that, because if you check his FEC reports, he takes money from all of these banks that are not in New Hampshire. He took money from Wells Fargo. I called on him to return that money after they defrauded tens of thousands of customers. The CEO even had to resign, but Gibbs didn't return the money. And then in this week's union leader, and I found this particularly disturbing on Thursday, and you can go and check it, it was revealed that Carol Schaefer has lied for the last 12 years about not taking money from DC lobbyists. In fact, she's taken over $100,000 from individual lobbyists, and she's taken $140,000 from a lobby that is pro-Iran, which I find particularly disturbing, as she was serving on the Armed Services Committee. So I don't take a penny from PACs, super PACs, political parties, because I always want to be able to vote my conscience and put New Hampshire first. I also think it's outrageous that people make almost $200,000 a year serving in Congress, when your office is paid for, your staff of 20 is paid for, your travel is paid for, many of your meals and expenses are paid for. You shouldn't go to Washington to get rich. That was never our founding fathers' intention, that you go to Washington to get rich. So I'm going to take the minimum wage salary of about $14,000 a year, and then I'm going to donate the rest of my salary, $160,000 of your taxpayer money, back to charities here in New Hampshire, not chosen by me, but chosen by the people of New Hampshire, because it's your money and it should come back here. And I'm going to introduce legislation that would reduce congressional salaries from almost $200,000 a year to the median individual income in the United States. You should make the 50 percentile. You shouldn't make more because you're in Congress. You shouldn't make less because you're in Congress. I just think that it's really inappropriate, the amount of, you see people there 40 years, they've made $5, $6, $10 million of our money. I just think that's inappropriate, and I won't stand for it. So I'm very honored to have received every newspaper endorsement that has been released in this district. The Portsmouth Herald, Foster's Daily Democrat, the Conway Daily Sun, the Rochester Times, the Hampton Union, Exeter News Leader. Every single, the Union Leader has not endorsed, although they did have a very nice editorial about me. It didn't say endorse, so I don't count it as an endorsement. But of every newspaper who has sat down and had an editorial board meeting with the three of us, I have earned the endorsement of every single one of them. So I'm really excited to be here. I thank you so much for taking the time and for staying. I know it's been a long morning, and I'm excited to take your questions.
Great, and so here's the first one. You're running as an independent, and of course we have two parties in Congress, Republicans and Democrats. Is it true that you would caucus with the Republicans if elected?
That is not true. So the Democratic Party has spread this rumor, and it is not true. What I have said, and you can look anywhere in any public statement, I have said that I will not vote for the speaker because I'm not going to vote for the Democrat or the Republican because I don't think as an independent I should be putting my vote towards either candidate for speaker. And I will caucus only so much as it means getting my committee assignments with whichever party is in the majority. And why will I do that? Because that is what's best for you. Because when you caucus with the majority, you get an extra committee assignment and your bills can get through the Rules Committee. Nancy Pelosi last weekend said that the House is within reach for the Democrats. So if the Democrats win, I'll happily caucus with the Democrats. If the Republicans win, I'll happily caucus with Republicans. If it switches in 2 years and I'm reelected, I will switch. Because I'm not going to be boxed into, both of my opponents try to box me in as a member of the opposite party, and I'm not going to be boxed in like that because this fundamentally is a moderate district. I think that on social issues, we have a live and let live attitude, but we are fiscally responsible. That's what I learned in business, and that's what I want to do in Congress.
What is your position regarding the Affordable Care Act, and do you support a woman's right to choose?
Yep. So with regards to the Affordable Care Act, I buy my insurance on the exchange. I believe I'm the only candidate because both of them have lifetime health coverage from the government. I buy my health care on the Obama exchange. And so I know the problems of the Obama exchange. I lost my doctor, so I went to graduate school. I did law school and business school at Harvard. I had a doctor who was like less than 5 miles over the border, but happened to be in Massachusetts. My insurance plan decided that that was out of network now, and so I lost my doctor. My premiums have skyrocketed. I don't think we're going to repeal it. I don't think that that's reasonable, and those who talk about repealing it don't have a plan to replace it. But we definitely need to do a significant overhaul. And so what I would do is two things. One is I would create a regional exchange for all of Massachusetts, or for all of New England, including Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Why is that important? Because if you create a regional exchange, then more insurers will participate. Right now we only have really 2 insurers participating in Obamacare in New Hampshire because the number of people who buy insurance on the Obamacare exchange is very small. And so they don't, if they were to have one catastrophic event, they would be very concerned about, that they would lose a lot of money because they don't insure a lot of people in the state. If you broaden the risk pool and you make it all of New England, that's going to increase competition. You'll have more plans participating, so you'll have more choices of different options. As you increase competition, that will lower costs, right, because they'll be competing with one another, and it will also afford you more choice. So right now, on my Obamacare insurance, I wouldn't be able to go to Dana-Farber if I got cancer. I want to go to Dana-Farber if I get cancer. They're the best cancer institute in the area. I think we need to make sure that that's a right that everybody who gets their insurance through Obamacare has. The second thing that I would do is I would allow people, and this is a public choice, not a public option, but particularly young people who move around a lot, maybe they're going to college in California, but they're here in the summers, and they want insurance that's going to cover them everywhere. And they don't have a lot of health needs, so they don't mind a higher copay. I would let them buy into Medicare. If they want to buy into Medicare, let's let them buy into Medicare. There are 2 things that would be good about this plan. First, by letting them buy into Medicare, they would have coverage that covers them all over the United States. Anywhere in the United States, they would be covered. And if they don't have a lot of health needs, as most of our young people don't, they wouldn't mind a 20% copay. They could always get a supplemental insurance plan if they wanted, but they're not going to be too worried about that. They just want to make sure they're covered in a catastrophe. Thirdly, by letting young people into Medicare, we can shore up the financial stability of Medicare without raising taxes. And so those are my plans for the Affordable Care Act. In terms of a woman's right to choose, I support a woman's right to choose. I believe that I trust women to make their own health care decisions with themselves, their doctors, their health care providers, and if relevant, their faith advisors.
U.S.-Israeli relations have been strained in recent years. What steps would you recommend to ameliorate that situation?
Yeah. So I was fortunate to travel to Israel a couple of years ago, and I found it to be truly an awe-inspiring experience. I think that Israel is clearly our #1 ally in the region, the only democracy in the region, and that there has always been and there should always be a very special relationship between Israel and the United States. I think that I have disagreed with some of the policies around, for example, particularly the nuclear deal with Iran. I think diplomacy is always the best option. I don't support us getting ground troops into the Middle East again. But that deal allows, they get 24 days of notice before the inspector shows up. And some of the inspections they do themselves. I've never heard of such a thing. When Reagan negotiated the START Treaty, right, we went into their facilities unannounced, they came into our facilities unannounced. And then we turned over $100 to $150 million to a state sponsor of terrorists that is funding Hamas in the West Bank, Hezbollah in Lebanon, ISIS. So I have deep concerns about that, and I think that we need to rebuild that special bridge between the United States and Israel, because they are our greatest ally in combating terrorism that originates in the Middle East, and they are the front line bearing the brunt of those attacks. So I think that there needs to be a major repair job done in U.S.-Israeli relationships. You know, it's been historic that either party, we've always considered that relationship particularly special, and as an independent, I'd like to return to that. It shouldn't be subject to, who's in power in Israel and who's in power here. This is a special relationship, and it should be preserved no matter which party's in power in either country.
If in Congress, given the rising national debt, what would you do to address the debt? And if we are spending too much, what programs would you cut?
Yep. So I do think that the deficit is a real problem. And I would bring the same process that I brought to my business to the national deficit and the national debt. It's really easy to say, let's just lop off the Department of Education, or let's lop off the Department of Energy, right? But for example, if you lopped off the Department of Education, right now, for better or worse, and I didn't necessarily agree with this, they administer all student loans, okay, and all Pell Grants. So are kids just not going to get student loans and Pell Grants anymore? That's obviously not a solution. My business, in the 10 years that I owned it, we had 9 years where we were up, and we had 1 year where we were down by about 10%. It was the year that we rebranded. We changed our name because we wanted to have, originally it was a test prep company, and then we became more sort of a admissions counseling, test prep, college affordability. So we helped people with all different parts of getting into college, taking the tests, affording college, and so we changed our name. And we were down 10%. I didn't just lop off the marketing department, right? Because then the next year I would have been in trouble because I didn't have any marketing for a year. So what I did is I went through and I looked at marketing and sales and operations, and I found waste. Where were we doing things that we didn't need to do? Where was there duplicative spending? And that's what I was doing in the federal government. I think that we need to have an annual audit of the federal government, just like every major corporation has to have an independent audit, and we need to go and look for this waste. One of the areas where I'd like to see a lot of cutting is if you look during the Great Recession, the area that had the greatest increase in housing prices was the 5 suburban counties around Washington, D.C. And that's because a little-known fact is that we outsource a lot of our government work to private contractors who make $200,000 or more. I think that's absolutely insane, right? We should trust, and if the bureaucrats in the government can't do it, then we should replace them. But we should not be supplementing them with these really expensive consultants, whether it's consultants for IT or consultants for human resources. We've got to wrangle that in. So that's an area I've already identified for a lot of ways. Because why should it be that when the rest of the country was in a Great Recession, the capital region was booming? Something's wrong there, right? Government has a role to play, especially in a recession. They need to try to stimulate demand. But they shouldn't be profiting at the expense of everyone else in the country when we're suffering. So that's an area that I've already pinpointed that I'd like the audience to take a specific look at.
So here's your final question, and we're getting close to the end. And
I know you guys are all thrilled.
Following the question, you may feel free to give a closing statement and any final remarks. And so the question is this: do you believe that our elections are rigged, running as an independent, and will you accept the results of the election?
Well, of course I will accept the results of the election. I don't think that the election process itself is rigged. So I don't believe there's voter fraud or dead people voting or anything like that. But I do believe that the two-party system has sort of taken over the democracy. And I do think that that's a problem, that we need independent voices. And I'll just go into my final statement here, which is, If Maine can send an independent to the U.S. Senate, if Vermont can send an independent to the U.S. Senate, if Connecticut can send an independent to the U.S. Senate, there is no reason why New Hampshire, which has a higher independent registry than all of those states, cannot send an independent to the U.S. House. Rather than turning back the clock and going back to this ridiculous hyper-partisan circus between Frank Gates and Councilor Porter, we've got to move forward. We've got to look ahead. And you know, I really enjoyed being here and taking your questions. One thing I did want to mention that you didn't cover is that I strongly oppose BBS. I know that's an important issue for a lot of people. I think that Israel is facing a very difficult situation in terms of terrorists, particularly on the West Bank right now. And I don't think that the approach, I think we need to work together and not try to punish Israel for protecting itself. So I just wanted to make sure that I included that in my closing remarks. But I have flyers outside. I'd love if you want to grab them. And we're really excited about this. We think that we will send the first independent to Washington ever from New Hampshire. And I would be humbled to have your vote on November 8th. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the Brotherhood Breakfast. Thank you very much for your attention and for your tremendous civility and hospitality.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're in the P20s, so it's a three-way race. It's tied, basically. It's a dead heat. Nobody's out of the 20s, so it's all going to be about who shows up, and we're feeling very positive.
Wow, very good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much.